The markets are closed, but the business stories are just heating up. I'm Robert Tan. This is your Business Brief. Asian shares rose on Monday ahead of the second round of trade talks between Washington and Beijing today in London. Japan's Nikkei 225 rose by 0.88%, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng advanced 0.94%. South Korea's Kospi led regional gains, climbing more than 1%. China's Shanghai Composite inched up 0.19%, and Singapore's Straits Times Index added 0.15%. In contrast, Australia's ASX 200 was the only major index to decline, slipping 0.27%. In the currency markets, the US dollar weakened against the Japanese yen, falling 0.26%, and also dropped 0.31% against the South Korean won. It slipped 0.22% versus the Singapore dollar and edged down by nearly 0.1% against the Thai baht. The US dollar is meanwhile flat with a slight uptick against the Hong Kong dollar. The Australian dollar, on the other hand, strengthened by 0.42%. Market commodities showed mixed performance. Gold prices fell by 0.44%. In the oil sector, West Texas Intermediate crude dipped slightly by nearly 0.1%, and Brent crude decreased by 0.14%. Meanwhile, Dubai crude bucked the trend, rising more than 1%. In the cryptocurrency market, Bitcoin declined by 0.85%, while Ethereum experienced a sharper drop of nearly 2%. The National Wages Productivity Commission warns against substantially increasing the daily minimum wage. On Bilyonaryo news channels at the forefront, its executive director says such an increase may weaken the labor market and affect MSME enterprises. The statement comes after House lawmakers approved a 200 peso wage hike.
We just mentioned there that a significant increase in, or a substantial increase in the minimum wage may potentially weaken the labor market institutions that we have right now. For example, it may pose problems in terms of complying with labor standards, especially our micro, small, and medium enterprises. It can also increase the informality in our establishments.
Meanwhile, IBON Foundation Executive Director Sunny Africa called the hike a win-win for both employers and workers. He explains economic progress depends on consumer spending, and that begins with giving communities real purchasing power. He also calls for a major overhaul of economic indicators, saying they no longer reflect the reality faced by ordinary Filipinos. He adds current policies tend to favor big business over workers.
Why are workers said to be inflationary when they demand higher wages, but businesses, when they increase their prices para ma-increase yung profit margin nila, hindi sinasabing inflationary yun? Hindi ba this kind of a distortion there? Sa amin, it's that attitude nga na we're so accustomed to thinking that workers are a burden. We're so accustomed to thinking that the real drivers of the economy are the business owners.
The Makati Business Club is warning that a proposed 200 peso across-the-board wage hike could lead to massive job losses and inflation, particularly hitting small businesses. In an interview on BNC's Business 360, MBC Executive Director Apong Pin said regional wage boards, not Congress, should determine increases based on local conditions.
We're not saying no wage hikes ever, right? What we're saying is let the regional wage boards be the ones to make the hikes because they consider the economic consequences.
Ong Pin further credited the government for successfully easing inflation but warned that a proposed wage hike could undermine these efforts.
When you fight inflation, you give people the money that they're earning, you give it more value, you know? And that is much, much better than giving them more money with less value.
Ong Pin also argued that lawmakers may be overlooking long-term economic risks in favor of short-term popularity gains. He then urges the president to veto the bill if possible, warning that it could result in economic downturn if passed into law. The Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC, revokes the certificates of registration and authority of over 400 lending companies for repeatedly failing to submit reportorial requirements. These include Cordim, Philippines Incorporated, and MFDS Lending Corporation. In a revocation order that was issued on May 30 by SEC's Financing and Lending Companies Department, the agency says that the corporations failed to file required audited financial statements, general information sheets, and directors' compensation and performance reports at least 3 times within 5 years. The SEC also previously informed the affected firms in October 2023 to participate in an amnesty program, but they did not comply. This prompted the agency to classify them as delinquent. The Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, has exempted 10 more medicines from value-added tax. These include 2 medicines for cancer, such as Tegafur, 2 for diabetes, which includes 500 milligrams of metformin hydrochloride, and 1 for high cholesterol, 2 for hypertension, which includes metoprolol, and 3 for mental illness, such as lamotrigine tablet. Taiwan is opening 180,000 caregiver jobs over the next 5 years. Despite the demand, fewer Filipinos are applying. This may be due to low compensation. Current rules of the Department of Migrant Workers, or DMW, tag caregivers as household workers, limiting their pay to the equivalent of just over 20,000 pesos a month. No placement fees are allowed, but the Association of Licensed Recruitment Agencies are petitioning the DMW to reclassify caregivers as semi-skilled to boost interest. We're taking a short break. The biggest business stories from around the country are up next. You're watching Business Brief. You're back on Business Brief. Bilyonaryo Andrew Tan's Emperador feels the heat from weak whiskey sales, but it's a different story for its brandy product. Our reporter Sujin Kim is in Quezon City with the details. Go ahead, Sujin.
Robert, Emperador Inc., the world's largest brandy producer and 5th largest Scotch whiskey manufacturer, led by tycoon Andrew Tan, faced global headwinds in 2024, weighed down by a whiskey slowdown and looming U.S. tariff risks. Management warned of a price-conscious environment and heightened competition in the luxury Scotch segment, particularly affecting high-margin products. To mitigate the impact of new U.S. tariffs, Emperador is in talks with suppliers and distributors to maintain shelf pricing stability. Meanwhile, brandy performance showed strong signs of recovery. Despite the challenges, Emperador posted consolidated revenues of 61.65 billion pesos for full year 2024. As part of its global expansion thrust, Emperador is scaling operations in Mexico, Spain, and Scotland. Listed on the Singapore Exchange in 2022, Emperador continues to build on its global legacy, now present in over 60 countries. Looking ahead, President and CEO Winston Ko is optimistic that a global consumption rebound, particularly in 2026, will support a new cycle of growth. And those are latest updates from Quezon City. Back to you, Robert.
Thank you for that report, Sujin Kim. Meanwhile, jobs at the Port of Los Angeles have plunged 53% as U.S. tariffs under President Donald Trump slashed cargo volume for the month of May by 25%. Over the last 25 shifts, only 733 jobs were available for 1,575 longshoremen as disruptions continue to plague trade with the Asia Pacific. Forecasts show June activity will drop further. The Port of Los Angeles has ranked as the largest container port in the United States each year since 2000. The ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, once regularly generating $21.8 billion and over 165,000 jobs, now risk shedding thousands more as shipping slows. Los Angeles Police Department said that it would not have deployed the National Guard to quell protests in various parts of the city. LA Police Chief Jim McDonnell said they would have gone through a number of steps before turning to federal troops. But he admits the protests are getting more violent. In one instance, a California Highway Patrol vehicle was set on fire on the 101 freeway. He also said that a reassessment of the National Guard's involvement may be needed in the future.
Do we need them? Well, looking at tonight, this thing has gotten out of control. Before I could answer that, I'd have to know more about what their capabilities are, what their role is intended to be able to make that determination. But we have great cops in Southern California here that work together all the time. So we have tremendous capability here. To say that we would go to that right away, I'd say we wouldn't have been there yet. Looking at the violence tonight, I think we got to make a reassessment.
President Trump defends his decision to deploy the National Guard to LA. He says the move is to ensure strong law and order. He also warns of deploying troops everywhere.
If we see danger to our country and to our citizens, we'll be very, very strong in terms of law and order. We're not going to let our country be torn apart like it was under Biden. We're going to be watching it very closely. And when they spit at people, they spit. That's their new thing. They spit, and worse, you know what they throw at them, right? And when that happens, I have a little statement. They say, they spit, we hit. And I told them, nobody's going to spit on our police officers. Nobody's going to spit on our military.
An analyst believes Trump's use of the National Guard could have a chilling effect on dissent.
It seems like a stretch. When I think about the National Guard, I think about the 1992 Los Angeles riots. I think about when President Lyndon Baines Johnson in 1965 sent in the National Guard during the Civil Rights era. I think of it as, really kind of widespread, disorder in the streets, the need to tamp things down. And this seems premature and closer to just using the military to really stop or suppress dissent. It gives the federal government, sort of more power, more authority versus the state and local authority. We got this compromise at the constitutional founding, dividing power between local and state government and the federal government, right? And the federal government is supposed to have limited and enumerated powers.
Israeli forces intercept a British-flagged charity vessel aiming to deliver desperately needed aid to the Gaza Strip. Among those on board, activist Greta Thunberg and European Union lawmaker Rima Hassan. The vessel left Sicily June 6, defying a 17-year naval blockade imposed by Israel after Hamas took control of Gaza in 2007. Israel calls the ship a propaganda stunt for Hamas, saying humanitarian aid may be delivered through an Israeli port. Over to France, where President Emmanuel Macron welcomes dozens of heads of state and leaders for the UN Ocean Conference. Among them, Britain's Prince William. In a forum ahead of the event, William stressed the need to keep our oceans healthy.
The truth is that healthy oceans are essential to all life on Earth. They generate half of the world's oxygen, regulate our climate, and provide food for more than 3 billion people. And today, they need our help. Rising sea temperatures, plastic pollution, and overfishing are putting pressure on these fragile ecosystems and on the people and communities who depend most upon them. For the future of our planet, for the future generations, we must listen to the words of Sir David Attenborough. If we save the sea, we save our world.
The conference aims to get more countries to ratify a treaty on protecting ocean biodiversity, which currently lacks sufficient signatories to come into force. A new cargo lifeline opens in Samar as the Amanda Yehan port goes fully operational, helping ease pressure from the partial closure of the San Juanico Bridge. Located in Basi Western Samar, the port now handles roll-on, roll-off, and light cargo vessels following emergency upgrades by the DPWH to boost capacity and access. Over the weekend, Transport Secretary Vince Dizon inspected the site alongside officials from the Philippine Ports Authority, Marina, Coast Guard, and DPWH. The port now features a 17-meter platform with ramp, plus land reclamation, stabilization, and obstruction clearance. Secretary Dizon says the port will serve as a crucial alternate hub for cargo movement, while the San Juanico Bridge, a key link between Samar and Leyte, undergoes emergency repairs. With inflation easing and the peso strengthening, we are now turned to a new snapshot of household conditions across the country. 50% of Filipino families still consider themselves poor, but the latest survey points to improving consumer sentiment. That's according to the latest Social Weather Station's poll, showing a 5-point drop from mid-April. The figure translates to 14.1 million Filipino households identifying as poor, down from 15.5 million. Meanwhile, 42% now describe themselves as well-off, the highest on record. Self-rated poverty is lowest in Metro Manila at 33% and highest in the Visayas at 67%. For policymakers and businesses, the shift may signal stronger domestic spending ahead, particularly among low to middle income households. But the sharp regional divide also underscores the need for more inclusive growth as inequality persists across the country. Philippine shares returned to the 6,400 level in the first trading day of the week. The PSE index ended higher by 0.4% to close at 6,406, finishing the day as the 7th best performer in Asia. The sectoral indices ended mixed, with services and holding firms rising the most at more than 1%, but decliners outpaced advancers 117 to 85. Total value turnover reached 5.1 billion pesos. More than half of the day's most active stocks ended in the green, with Bloomberry Resorts rising the most at nearly 20%. Meanwhile, at the foreign exchange market, the peso is currently trading at 55.83 against the greenback, weakening from previous close of 55.62. And that's a wrap for today's Business Brief. I'm Robert Tan. Join us again tomorrow as we bring you the stories that help you plan your next big, bold moves in business, only here on the Bilyonaryo News Channel. See you then.